All right, guys, it is another day and another topic. So this is something that gets really misunderstood, and I can't even say that I fully understand everything, but there was a conversation about this on an Instagram Live, and I thought it was something we should talk about and something that we should make more well known, and that is inbreeding versus line breeding. You want to create your own line. Obviously, I haven't even done this myself yet, but it's something that I'm working on, something that I've really been studying. So I think we should create the conversation. And on that note, that's all I'm trying to do here. This is meant to be somewhat educational, but also more of a let's get a basic understanding and then open a conversation. Sorry, my puppies are out and crazy. Guys. Okay, so my puppy stole my marker, but we got it back. So what is inbreeding and what is line breeding? Some people have different definitions, so this is something that you're going to want to establish for yourself. And inbreeding is closely related breeding, so parent to child, brother to sister. Some people think grandparent to grandchild, uncle to niece, aunt to nephew is too close. So this is something that you need to look at your breed, how wide the gene pool is, the availability of the traits that you want to incorporate in your program, and decide where your lines are. So, how do we decide where our lines are? So there's mathematical formulas and equations, and we could get into statistics and all that kind of stuff, but we can break it down pretty easily. So we have COI and COR. Now, COI is coefficient of inbreeding. COR is coefficient of relationship. These basically are a predictive measure of how many genes somebody will share and a measure of that across generations and relationships. So our COI is represented by F, and we're looking at the sum of half raised to the number of generations. So to make this easier, you can ignore the 1 plus FA. This is when the common ancestor that we're measuring is already inbred, and you can add in 1 plus their COI here. But we're going to ignore that for now. So father to daughter, we have half because you get half of your genes from the parents. So father contributes half. We have 2 generations. So you're looking at the generations above the puppy that you're measuring. So the daughter is the mother of the puppy. That's generation 1. The father is also the grandfather of the puppy, so he's generation 2. So we're going half to 2 generations, which is when you square it, it's multiplied by itself. So half times half is a quarter, which gives them a 25% COI. They share 25% of their genes. So they're 25% inbred, basically. We do the same thing with first cousins. You're going 4 generations. And now half to the 4th is 1/16. They are 6.25% inbred. It's a lot less inbreeding. So where you want to cut off your numbers for inbreeding is entirely dependent on your tolerance for risk and the availability of the gene pool for your breed. So generally, 5% or less is considered best practice. Greater than 10%, you're at an increased risk of diseases. And, the traits and issues that are common to inbreeding. Now, COR, not the same number, but basically representing the same thing. This is how many genes you share. So a parent to a child. The child shares 50% of their genes with each parent. Grandchild shares 25% of their genes with each grandparent. An uncle and a niece share 25% of their genes. First cousins share 12.5% of their genes. So what you're looking at here is COR is double COI. So we're basically measuring the same thing, not going to say that one is better or worse than the other, because these are a prediction. So when I say that, what I mean is we have dad and we have mom. And they each got half of their genes from their dad and mom. So dad is going to pass 50% of the genes to each puppy. But he can pass 50% from his dad's side. He could pass 50% from his mom's side. Chances are it's going to be a mixture of dad and mom's genes, but that mixture can be weighted one way or the other. So this puppy might be 25% of dad's father, might be 25% mom's father, might be 40% dad's, well, that doesn't add up to 50. I'll just make this 20% from dad's father, 30% from dad's mom, and then 25% from mom's mom. And then the next puppy might only get 5% of dad's father's genes. They might only get 10% of mom's father's genes. And then that means for that 50% from dad, they're going to get 45% of their genes from dad's mom. And they're going to get 40% from mom's mom. So this can be a mix all the way across for this entire litter of different ratios of the genes that they got from each parent and each grandparent and how it was passed down. It's just a lottery. So this is where when dad and mom are completely unrelated and there's not a lot of relatedness behind their pedigree going as far back as 5-6 generations, we can call this scatter breeding, because you're gonna get a wide mixture of DNA mixes and you're gonna get a wide variety of traits. And this is why people talk so badly about scatter breeding. Now, this is what can happen, but sometimes this is good. And so where this comes in is in planning and your pedigrees, and when you're looking at what you want to create. So if dad and mom are loosely related, then they share some of the same DNA, and they're going to pass some of the same DNA for both sides, which is where you can get homozygosity versus heterozygosity. So homo, same. Hetero, different. So for an example, we've talked about color in the last video. We talked about genes and how they come together. So for a recessive gene to express, you need 2 copies. You need one from mom, one from dad. If they are related, you have a higher chance of them having the same copies of those genes. So for color, that could be blue and you would have a much higher chance of getting that recessive blue to express if they each have at least one copy of this recessive gene. If they don't each have a copy, you can't get it at all. But if you don't know their DNA or their pedigree, if you know they're related, you have a much higher chance of getting shared genes passed down from both sides. Now, when you're unrelated, you bring in those outside genes. So maybe you won't get any blues. Maybe dad is DD and mom is big D, little d, and now you're either going to get big D, or big D, little d. You won't get any of your recessive genes expressed. Now, that can be good for locking in traits. That's where you want the homozygosity to be expressed. What we don't want is disease. So if mom and dad are related, and they both carry disease X. So they have a copy of not disease and a copy of diseased. Then you have a 25% chance of getting that little x, and now you have this recessive disease expressing in your program. So this is where planning, looking at pedigrees, and doing all of the testing can really help you decide where to double up and where to go outside. Now, let's say you've got a dog that you've done the testing, you know it's healthy, it's winning shows, it's a gorgeous dog, it very clearly represents your vision of where your program is going. So now you use this dog as a sire, and you go to a dam, probably unrelated or a little bit distantly related. They create a daughter. And then you run the sire to the daughter, and you get the granddaughter, who is also a daughter. What we call backbreeding. And this is where you can really lock in traits. The general rule is to double up on anything that you want. So if this sire has a lot of traits that you want, you will double up on those by breeding him into your program twice. You also run the risk of doubling up on those health problems, diseases, recessive defects, maybe a bad bite or splayed feet or throwing tails, anything like that. So you have to be really careful when you're doing this to know your lines and have looked back at that pedigree and planned these breedings. You need to know both sides as far back as you can, see the dogs, see what they've produced, and know what you're getting yourself into. This is not for the faint of heart. So there's a saying, obviously double up on the traits, and there's also let the sire of the sire be the grandfather of the dam. So you have your stud, and you want his sire to be the grandfather. So either mom or dad here of your dam. So now you have a 1 generation and a 2 generation difference. And spreading that out means that the stud has 50%. The stud has 50% of this sire's DNA. The dam has 25%. They're each going to pass 50% of that down to their puppies. And again, this is theoretical. You can get different mixtures, but we're just looking at this mathematically. So you get 25% plus 12.5%, and now you have 37.5% of this grandsire's DNA in your litter, on average. And again, that mix of DNA, you might not have this. You might have more and you might have less. So this is where you need to get into type tracking and really watching for diseases and problems showing up versus the positive traits that you're looking for. So on that note, when you are looking to start a line of your own that is going to have longevity, going to have a good reputation, going to have more positives than negatives, you need to look at disease and infertility, health, temperament, and testing. So, you want to do your DNA. For Frenchies, we test things like DM, cystinuria, PRA, and a lot of people will argue that things like DM don't affect French Bulldogs, which as far as we know, that is true. But we are beginning to breed in other breeds. We are getting the big rope from the Shar-Pei. We are getting the Panda or KIT spotting from pugs. We are getting, pink from Pekingese. So there's a lot of breeds being brought in, and we don't know if that will bring in the genes that will activate the recessive diseases. So make sure you know what's in your lines. If you have a dog that carries DM, don't breed it to another dog that carries DM. If you have a dog that carries cystinuria, do not breed it to another dog that carries cystinuria. You have to make sure that the goal is always for the puppies to be improved through inbreeding and line breeding. You don't want to go backwards. So if you have a dog that carries DM and you have a dam that carries cystinuria, you could get puppies that carry both. Now you're worse off than where you started. So be very careful with planning your breedings, do your health testing, and I also recommend going on OFA, so Orthopedic Foundation for Animals, and looking at your breed's recommendations. So for French Bulldogs, this is elbows, knees, hips, eyes, cardiac, trachea, thyroid, spine. So that's a lot of testing, and it can get very expensive. But this is how you can better your line. So protect your reputation, protect your puppies, do your testing, and put together parents that can produce better than what they are, not just structurally, but health-wise. And then on top of that is temperament. So a lot of dog temperament comes from parents. So if you have a dog that you absolutely love because of their personality, double up on that if they're healthy, because you can give somebody the healthiest, most structurally sound dog, but if they're untrainable, if they will not housebreak, if this person wants a lazy, cuddly dog and they end up with a psychopath that is zooming around the house at 3 a.m., they're going to be mad at you. So you need to have a temperament type in your program. So bring that in, or produce it from the dogs that you have that you like their temperament. This is a really long and convoluted process to get everything you want into one line. And that is where the selective breeding comes in. So you have to really look at everything and grade your dogs. You need to have a way of deciding who's worth being in your program, who is worth breeding, and how do you define that? Where are your boundaries and your limits? And there's a lot of things that you can ask yourself to set that up. So, things to think about before you start your line, before you start inbreeding and line breeding. Are you willing to cull puppies? If you inbreed a father to a daughter, a mother to a son, a grandfather to a granddaughter, and you have cleft palates, heart defects, puppies born with organs on the outside of their bodies, water puppies that are not going to make it, any of these health defects that will really lower the quality of life, you could have an entire litter of puppies that will have a low quality of life. Are you willing to take that risk? And are you willing to pay for euthanizing an entire litter and come out with nothing? Are you willing to possibly pet home the ones that can have a decent quality of life but are nowhere near breeding quality, have defects? Are you willing to pet home them for free? Because that's generally how that works. You end up with a puppy that has special needs, has a heart defect that's going to be very expensive to care for most of its life. You have a puppy that has megaesophagus and it needs to be put in a high chair and sat upright for 20 minutes after every feeding. Like, these defects are massively life inhibiting, but some people will take these puppies, but knowing the cost, they're going to take them for free. So you're going to take the losses. You're going to take the losses on the inbreeding. It's not a way to perfect your line without risk. Now, so on that note, inbreeding does not cause disease. Inbreeding exposes it. We talked to, puppies. We talked about carriers of recessive diseases, and that's what happens. You massively increase your chances of both parents carrying a copy of a disease the more related they are. So this is where you really do need to be selective about who you are breeding and what you are willing to do. So you can't just look at traits. You cannot just look at temperament. You cannot just look at health. You need to look at all three and grade your dogs. Your dogs in a way that makes sense for you. Come up with something that guides your selective breeding process. I would like to talk about temperament testing further. I don't want to make this a super long video, but I will go over temperament testing independently later on, and maybe also go deeper into health testing in another video. So now that you're deciding how to grade your dogs, let's talk about type tracking. How do you know that you're getting closer to your vision? So maybe you want to make yourself a form and you want to look at head size. You want to look at back length. You want to look at height to the withers. You want to look at chest size. You can make a list of things that you want to measure. So you're trying to get bigger heads. So your stud right now has a 19-inch head measured around the outside. Then you keep his son. His son reaches maturity. He's 1.5 years, 2 years old. Then you want to measure. And if that son's 19.5, you're going in the right direction. Maybe you want to decrease back length. Dad had a 10-inch back. You measure the son, he's 10.5. You went backwards. Height, maybe dad's 10 inches at the shoulder and son's 9.5. So maybe you went forward there. Chest size, maybe they're the same. Maybe they're, 20 inches diameter around the chest. So you didn't change anything here. But you have a positive, a negative, a positive, and an equivalent, a wash. You got more positives than negatives. You're going in the right direction. But this is where you have to track. You have to have a way to type track what you are trying to create. Now you can do that with health as well. So dad carried cystinuria. But you took dad to a dam that doesn't carry it. The son didn't get it. He's negative. That's another positive. You've improved your breeding program. You've improved him structurally, type-wise. You've improved him DNA, health testing-wise. And then you can also look at temperament. So dad was a little bit of a psycho. Dad's a little hot. He's marking your walls. He's humping the couch. He'll jump up on you no matter how many times you try to train him not to. So mom was a little bit more chill. She's lazy. She likes to lay around. She likes to cuddle. Son comes out more like mom. Maybe he's got some crazy tendencies. Maybe he'll chew your couch or your baseboards, but for the most part, he's a lot easier to palate. Hey, no. If that's what you're looking to create, that's another positive. Now, if you're not a French Bulldog breeder, or you're a working line, or a bite dog, sport dog, this could be a negative. You might want dogs with a higher drive. But with my specialty in French Bulldogs, I really like chill dogs. So this is a huge positive for me. I have no problem rehoming a dog that makes my life hard. And again, reputation. So you can give somebody the best, healthiest dog, but if it doesn't fit their life, they're not gonna like you. So pay attention to this. It will really help your program over time to be a better program overall and help you be a better breeder. So now you've decided what you want to create. You've decided on the dogs you like. You've decided what your ideal dog would look like. You've decided, what your goals are health-wise. You have decided what kind of temperament you want, and you go looking for your foundation dogs. A general rule of thumb is that a program will be built on 5 dogs. Now, really, it can be 4. But you're going to go out and you're going to find 3 closely related dogs. Now, you can also create these. You can go out and buy a female and breed her to a sire that you like, that complements her health, all of that planning, pedigree, everything. He can be unrelated. He can be loosely related. But you breed her, and then you keep her, and you keep 2 daughters. Now you have 3 closely related females. You have a mother and 2 sisters. Now, you want one that's loosely related. So now, maybe you use the sire's brother. So you take this daughter to an uncle, and she produces a puppy. We'll say granddaughter. So now you have that one loosely related. And then you want an unrelated dog. But your unrelated dog should have the traits that you already were going for. So if that is, big head, short back, six-panel clear, and chill temperament, your unrelated dog should complement everything that you're already doing. So you don't have to buy this dog. You can go outside. You can take this daughter to a sire, take the granddaughter to that same sire, and now you've started your next generation, and you can keep the ones that most fit your type. And again, that comes back to the type tracking. So as your puppies are getting older, what are their temperaments like? How's their development? Do they seem healthy? Run those DNA panels if anybody was a carrier. Find out. So you look at their structure, their health, their temperament, and you pick your keepers. And then you can just keep repeating. So this female can go to another sire that closely resembles your line, or maybe is loosely related to, you know, the sire that you took outside. Maybe it's a half brother, maybe it's a, you know, father, something. And then bring that in, and now you have half siblings. Maybe you have a daughter and a son that you decide to keep. And the son can go to his niece. He can go to a half sister. And now you're creating all these options to keep line breeding, but still bringing in unrelated DNA to keep your COI, your COR, all of that low enough to help to prevent the expression of disease. And the other thing is, it's not just disease. So when you start getting tightly related, you can get those health problems, but you can also get infertility. So a big problem I see in a lot of lines, and they won't tell you this, you gotta ask, does that dog have 2 testicles before you breed to it? Cryptorchidism, 1 testicle, is a huge problem in some of the tightly bred lines. I'm not gonna name names, but I've been there. I've talked to other people, and they've had the same issues with some of these big lines. You can pay a lot of money for a stud and get nothing for it. You can pay a lot of money for a puppy and have to castrate them and rehome them. So the tighter you get, the more likely you are to have those issues with infertility, and also having sick, defective, or even crazy puppies. The tighter you get inbred, the more mental defects you can have as well. So you gotta really watch for that. Ask a lot of questions if you're buying a dog that's already tightly line bred. And this is where you need to define your boundaries and limits. So again, with the type tracking, temperament testing, health testing, once your dogs are old enough, I highly recommend, even if you don't want to do full OFAs, do the preliminaries, because you need to go back to having a rule book that you follow. You write your own, but where is a dog acceptable for breeding? Where is a dog unacceptable for breeding? Where do you draw those lines? What will make a dog automatically disqualified from your program? It could be Ryejaw. It could be health issues. It could be temperament. For me, like I said, I will throw out a dog that makes my life hard, that doesn't want to be trained, that doesn't want to be housebroken, that doesn't want to not chew my furniture, or, you know, whatever. They're up running around at 3 a.m. They want to bark in their crate, and they never learn to sleep through the night in a crate. They're going to a home that'll deal with them, because it's not me. And I don't want to put those dogs into homes and have my reputation take a hit because these people are getting dogs that are crazier than they expected. So make sure that you write this down. You create your type tracking form, and then you write your own rule book, and then follow it, because it can be really tempting. You have a puppy that fits your type perfectly. You're really thrilled. but you do those preliminary OFAs and he's got moderate hip dysplasia, a narrow trachea, and a mild heart murmur. Well, breeding that dog is probably a terrible idea. And it can be really tempting to say, well, I'll take him to an outside female and the puppies will be healthy. Maybe, or maybe you're gonna go back to having to cull an entire litter or getting 0 puppies because he's not healthy. Or you have a male born with cryptorchidism. He's been too tightly inbred. He has 1 testicle or neither testicle descends. You decide to breed him anyway because you're just so tempted. He's so perfect. And now you just keep having either small litters, no litters, unhealthy litters. Defining what is acceptable to you and following it, no matter how tempted you are not to, is the basis for a successful program. And it is the basis for a successful reputation and a successful line, because all of those small missteps will come out in time. Somebody will talk, somebody will have bad things to say about you. And that's not to say that that won't happen in a perfect program. You know, puppies come out randomly sick, unhealthy, or get that way later in life sometimes. But we need to do our best as a breeder to prevent that while creating the dogs that we envision. So I really, really recommend sit down and plan. And if you don't want to do math, you can find COI and COR calculators. You can find ones where you just put in the pedigree. So, you know, you go, this is the puppy I'm planning on breeding. I have dad, I have mom. I pulled their pedigrees and I know who granddad and grandma are on both sides. And, you know, let's say that they share granddad. So you can put that in online, that this is dog 1 that you're going to create. This is 2, 3, 4 is the same dog, 5 and 6. And it'll give you your COI or your COR. So just Google for a calculator and you don't even have to do any math. You don't have to figure anything out, and you can keep doing that. So if grandma's also the same, you can have 5 and 5 and it'll calculate that for you. There is no reason not to be looking at this and considering it, and not just your DNA, not just the breed type, not just the structure that you want. So yeah, I hope this helps you create better dogs, and I hope we can start a conversation on how this can affect our breed and how we can better it in the future. I'm really interested to hear if any of you have used COI, COR, if you've created your own line, how long you've been breeding, the effects that you've seen of inbreeding, line breeding, back breeding, anything you've done, what your experiences are. I really hope that we can have a conversation down in the comments, or, you know, jump on my Instagram and let's have a conversation. Again, I am Flex French Bulldogs on IG. So, you know, if you don't want to leave a public comment and talk about the bad things you've experienced, send me a message. Let's talk about it. And maybe I can put your experience in a video without publicly sharing who you are, so that we can continue this conversation. So if you took the time to watch this and made it through my puppies being crazy and my dog's barking and stealing my markers, then I greatly appreciate you, and I hope you'll leave me some feedback, even if you don't have experience with any of this. Let me know what you want to see. Let me know what I missed, what I got right, what I got wrong. Just anything to help me grow this channel in a way that helps all of us do better. So thank you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.